Yeah, I got to do this. I really shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. This is totally internal. Every time we come in and the room's cold, I tell them, yeah, it's cold, but as soon as, if you've not seen The Matrix, humans are a heat source. We're about to bring in 200 little engines generating 98.6 degrees of heat. And I tell them this, and they go, no, we got to crank the heat. And they crank the heat up, and then all the engines come in, and now everybody's in a sauna. Did I tell you that? I told you that. I said, next time I say, don't turn on the heat, everybody listening? Next time I say, don't turn on the heat, what are you going to do? Okay, record that. Make sure that's recorded, and we'll send that to all the leaders in the church. When I say don't turn on the heat, don't turn on the heat. Because somebody open some doors. I'm serious. Open the doors, get some heat in here, get some cool in here, because you're all going to fall asleep in 32 seconds. There is no way I can keep hot people who just came in from cold awake. It's not possible. Well, Happy New Year. As payment for your putting up with the pain and suffering of getting out in this cold and then coming into a sauna, you get one of these on the way out. Just grab it on the way out. You get a free little sticker to advertise the church. We've been giving it away for weeks, but I'm going to make you aware of it. There we go. Just go like this a little bit, get it cooling in. There we go. There we go. We'll make it. We'll survive. All right? Okay. Now, all right, let's. Oh, one more thing I want to tell you about, just because I don't announce this often enough. If you look on your bulletin when you first come in, you get a teaching guide. And if you look at the top of it and the bottom of it, at the top, of course, it says the page number for the burgundy Bibles that you get on the way in. And then there's also a little weird little web address. And you probably don't know what that is because I never tell you. But if you type that into your phone, and it's always bible.com/events and a number. If you put that in your phone, it'll pull up the teaching guide and every scripture I'm going to read. Written out, so you can and the QR code at the bottom does the exact same thing. And I should announce that once in a while, but I always can't squeeze it in. So that's what that's there for. Happy New Year. That's one more piece of the New Year thing. Now, okay, let's if you've run into this person, we've all probably run into this person once or twice, where you got a person, and a couple, usually it's a couple, and they've read a few too many books. And they say, and you notice that she's showing, and you talk with the baby, and they say, oh, yeah, well, we have this figured out. And this baby is not going to change our lives at all. We have it figured out. We know what the formulas are. We know the timing thing. We've read how you get babies to sleep through the night quickly. This baby is not going to impact our lives at all. Now, what do you say to that person? Normally not much, right? You just kind of look at them and give them that, well, bless you, aren't you that special kind of stupid? Right? So, anyway. Now, let's change the scenario just a little bit. What if instead of somebody who has a baby and says they're not going to change, what if you have somebody who's a friend, and this couple, one of them's sister has a newborn baby, and the sister gets in some kind of issues and asks them to watch the baby for her for a while. So they get a baby in their house, but the sister, it's kind of an embarrassing situation. She doesn't want everybody to know about it. So she says, could you just keep it hush-hush that you've got my baby? Could you just not tell anybody that you've got a newborn baby in your house? Of course, they say, well, yeah, we can try. So, of course, the guy comes to work. You okay, man? Yeah, I just didn't sleep well last night. Why? Dogs nearby. Wander around, he's just sleepy all the time. She goes to work. Coworker's like, what's that stain on your shirt right there? That white stain. What is that? Toothpaste? And why is there Desitin in your purse? Because what everybody's going to do, they're going to look at that couple, right? After about a week of them having a newborn in their house and pretending like they don't, everybody's going to look at them like what? You're crazy. There is something wrong with you that we don't know. we have looked at you and we have determined there is something crazy about you. Well, what we're going to see today is in 2 Corinthians, if you're going to turn on your Bible to 2 Corinthians 5, that Paul has been dealing with the Corinthians, and the Corinthians have determined that Paul is crazy. There is something wrong with him mentally. And so Paul is going to explain to them why he's crazy. And the weird thing is, as we go through this, we're going to see that Paul would expect us to be also crazy. Matter of fact, he would look at us and say, if people look at you and don't see you as a little bit crazy, you're doing it wrong. Okay? So let's start reading in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, starting in verse 13. If it seems we are crazy, it is to bring glory to God. And if we are in our right minds, it is for your benefit. Either way, Christ's love controls us. Since we believe that Christ died for all, we also believe that we have all died to our old life. He died for everyone, so that those who receive his new life will no longer live for themselves. Instead, they will live for Christ, who died and was raised for them. So we have stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. At one time, we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view. How differently we know him now. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. And all this is a gift from God, who brought us back to himself through Christ. And God has given us this task of reconciling people to him. For God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. And he gave us this wonderful message of reconciliation. So we are Christ's ambassadors. God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ and we plead, come back to God. For God made Christ, who never sinned, to be the offering for our sin, so that we could be made right with God through Christ. Now, one of the things we like to do when a new year starts is to kind of reassess things, to reevaluate things. And I think it's a real good idea. And this passage invites us to reassess ourselves on a number of levels. And I want to dig into that today. I want to get us to look and reassess ourselves, but let me give you a warning. It's going to be an uncomfortable reassessment. You're probably not going to like some of it because we have this tendency to move away from where we want to be to a place where we find a little bit of comfort and a lot of the tension that God wants in our lives. So let's start out with this one. What he said was, at one time we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view, how differently we know him now. And the first thing we need to do is I need to reassess how I view God. Now, if you know me really, really well, you know that I'm not an outdoor person. One of the things that means is I only care about the weather for about a 24-hour period every week. I don't give a rip what the weather's like on Monday. I'm going to be inside. Okay? The only thing I care about is from about noon on Saturday till noon on Sunday. Because I don't know if you noticed, if it snows, people don't come to church, and I find that an important part of our, we come together, we reassess, we challenge each other, and we go back out, and it's important we come back together. And so it messes up my week, and I don't like for the weather to be bad from Saturday morning to Sunday morning, okay? Now, early last week, they started talking like there could be a storm coming. And I, being the ever-vigilant person that I am, went right into turtle mode. No, it's not. They're always wrong. Not real. La, 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 la. And you know what I discovered? My denial of the reality of the storm had absolutely no impact on the storm. None at all. If I were saying it's going to be a storm, this just kept the weather currents. And if I said there's going to be it had no bearing whatsoever on the reality of the storm that was coming. Can I tell you something? Whether or not you acknowledge or fail to acknowledge the reality of God has no bearing on God. Matter of fact, if you choose to try to define him differently than what he is, it has no bearing on him. And there are things about him that challenge us, things that make us uncomfortable. Isaiah 45, verse 22 and 23 says, God says, for I am God, there is no other. And at the end of verse 23 says, every knee will bend to me, and every tongue will confess allegiance to me. Then moving to more recent writings, Paul says, In Philippians 2, at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. There is a real God. Now, I encourage you, if you're not sure there's a God, if you don't think the God of the Bible is the God, I would say do some research and start checking, because the reality is he either is or he isn't. And if he is, and you're getting it wrong, that's a problem. So we're like, there is a storm coming. Okay, I deny the weather officials. I don't think it counts. I don't believe it's real. It has no bearing once the storm front gets here. If there truly is a God, you need to do the research, and you need to check into things, and you need to ask the questions, and you need to start looking at the stuff. I saw this week a prominent atheist blogger had converted to Christianity because there were things in her worldview that didn't work, and they worked better with the Christian worldview. You need to be checking that stuff out, because if this is right, if every knee will bow and every tongue will confess, every knee includes yours, and every mouth and every tongue includes yours. And so you need to decide, is this real or is it not? Now, that's for people who are working on their faith. The thing is, what I find for Christians, including myself, is that I don't deny the existence of God, but there are parts of him I don't like. And here's what I do. The parts of God that I don't like, I replace. It's like I've got a Lego God. Okay? And he's formed a certain way, and there's that God, but there's parts of him that I'm not comfortable with. And so what I do is I go and I snap those off, and I go back to the box of Legos, and I make my own version, and I snap into those places. Like some people, when I read the stuff about every knee bowing to Christ, some of you guys went, I don't know about that. That's awfully judgmental. I don't like that judgmental part of God where he actually holds us to standards and expects people to admit his sin. I don't like that part. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to put in one, and I'm going to take the loving area, and I'm going to multiply it and double it, and I'm going to have a lot more love, a lot less judgment. Of course, I know some Christians who they don't like the loving part of God. They don't like the part of God that he cares for the poor and the orphans and the widows and the aliens. They don't like that part, so they snap that part off and throw that in the box and pull out maybe a little more judgment or a little more something else, and they put it in there, and they make their own God, and we all do that. We take the parts of him that we don't like. We take the places where he opposes this particular sin, and we're kind of fond of that particular sin, so we take that off of the God, and we put on something else, and we replace it, and we make a God in our image. So you have two choices. You can either believe in the God of the universe who's totally in control, who formed you in his image, or you can form a God in your own image. And the problem is that God that you form in your own image is impotent to act in the areas you need him the most. Because where do you need God the most? You're going to hate this. In the areas you disagree with him the most. Right? I mean, the parts that you agree with him, you're already working on those things. You're already doing that stuff. You're already saying, hey, I really need to work on that. So you're working on it. You still need him, but you really need him in the areas where he makes you unhappy. You need God in the areas where he grates against your nature, because that's the areas of your nature that need fixing. Let me give you a hint. I think this will work. If you look at your life, and there are areas of your spiritual life that are unhappy or unfulfilling and unsatisfying, here's my speculation. My speculation is that my faith is unsatisfying and unfulfilling at exactly the points where I've substituted my private God for the real one. Read it again. My faith is unsatisfying and unfulfilling at exactly the points where I have substituted my private God for the real one. Where I've said, God, I don't want you to be like that. That's where I need him the most. And so when it comes to those areas, I'm going to be unsatisfied and unfulfilled because I've got a God who does not have the ability to fulfill me because he's not the real God. I've got the real God and I've got this fake God, and I've combined them together, and it's very unsatisfying. And once in a while, we have to sit down and reassess who God is and say, you know what? I didn't like this part, but I need to believe it anyway. I don't like this aspect of God, but I need to acknowledge it and submit to it. Because when it comes to God, your only real options are rejection or submission. There's not really much neutral ground in there. You're either rejecting him or you're submitting to him. And this time of year is a really good time to say, let me identify, because we're all rebellious, we're all stubborn, we all want our own God. It's a real good time of year to analyze my view of God and say, what are the areas, not are there areas, because I think all of us have these areas. It's not are there areas, it's what areas in my life am I substituting my personal God for the real one. And once I do that, now I'm ready for the hard work, because now I've got to reassess how I view myself. And you think at this point it's going to get mean, but it starts out not mean. Because it says in verse 15, says this, he died for everyone so that those who receive his new life will no longer live for themselves. Instead, they will live for Christ. Verse 17 says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has become. So when I reassess myself, let's start with a positive. The first thing I need to do is reassess my value. See, well, I said that gets right. Let's go and go. Want to talk about the prom? We taught this on Friday night and we had a bunch of high school kids, so I talked about the prom a whole lot. You guys remember prom, right? Okay. Now, the illustration works better, I think, because I'm old and I don't really know how things work now. But when I was growing up, when I was 16, 17, 18, guys asked girls out. I know that's switching. There's nothing wrong with switching it up. But I know that when I was 16, there was no option. No girl was going to ask me out, both because no girl wanted to, and B, and B, because that's not how it was done. So we'll, for the sake of this argument, let's all pretend we're 16-year-old girls getting ready for prom. Okay, in my era. So things haven't changed that drastically, except that area. Now, my imagination, because I know as a guy, I kind of had a ranking for the girls in my high school. That make sense? There was that girl, and there was that girl. Now, if you were a girl, you were looking at that ranking wondering, who's going to ask me out? Right? And if you were 16 years old in high school, and here came this guy, and he asks you out, and you're going, what do you say? Let's be honest, what are you saying? We're assuming you don't have a steady boyfriend or girlfriend. What are you saying? Should I wait and see if I can do better? Can I do better than this one? Or is this the best I'm going to get? And you're looking around going, and some of it came down to your self-worth and self-image, right? Your own confidence level. Because if right here asked you out and you said, that's the best I'm going to do because I view myself right here, you're going to say yes. Now, if you viewed yourself here, no, right? What happened if this guy asked you out? Asked you to the prom? The coolest, best-looking guy in school asks you to prom. How'd you walk in school the next day? If we move to the present real fast, how long would it take you to get that on Facebook? And Instagram and Snapchat. And that thing is out there in a hurry, right? That is on. Matter of fact, there's a plan. You've already figured it out. You know that at the prom, you're going to go get a picture taken, and you're going to get a T-shirt. And you're going to give it as away. You're going to put it on mugs and give it away as mugs at Christmas to people. Here's me and my prom date, right? Okay, now, spiritually, how do you rank yourself? You here? Here? How do you rank your value? Well, God asked you to the prom. This one asks you to the prom. This one says, of all of the creatures in the universe, I choose you. Now, what does that say about your value? What does that say about your worth? Romans 5:8, but God proves his own love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That means when we were still at our worst, when go back to our prom, without the makeup, without the hair done right, with little stuff in our teeth, God asked us. Galatians 2:20, the life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So before we start assessing ourselves, a lot of times what we tend to do is to devalue ourselves to such an extent that when we go to start talking about assessing ourselves, we're starting from a real defeated attitude. Matter of fact, when you have New Year's resolutions, how do they all start? You start with the stuff you're absolutely the worst at and say, I'm going to fix them, right? You never start with, you know what, you never start. Nobody says New Year's resolutions, I'm really good at this. What do? I need to do this. I need to change this. I suck here. I'm really bad here. I'm a terrible person here. And what you do right before the year starts is you go through and you come up with a list of all the things you are least happy about yourself, and you say, I'm going to change all those. And I'm saying the first thing you need to do if you're going to reassess yourself is to look at the fact that God is absolutely crazy about you, that God loves you, that God asked you to the prom, and start with the value that brings to your heart and to your life, and start there. So you're coming at the changes God wants to make in your life, not from an attitude of a defeated person or a person who feels worthless, but from the attitude of a person who knows their value, knows you're made in the image of God, knows that God is crazy about you. And from there, you start looking at everything else, not because you're worthless, but because you're so valuable that you should live into the value. You see the difference there? I'm not a worthless person trying to create value in my life. I'm an incredibly valuable person trying to live into the potential and the expectations and the love that God already has for me. You following? And from that, now I've reassessed my value, and I can now reassess my virtue, my purity, my morality, my holiness. Verse 14 said, Christ's love controls us. And that word means to exert dominion, domination in our lives. It says, keep reading in verse 14, since we believe that Christ died for all, we believe we have died to our new life. He died for everyone so that those who receive his new life will no longer live for themselves. Instead, they will live for Christ. Romans 6:11-12 says, so you too consider yourselves dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal bodies so you obey its desires. Let's go back to the prom. We're having fun at the prom? Let's go back to the prom. We're pretending we're 16-year-old females. We've been asked to the prom by the guy in school. Coolest, best looking, smartest, most likely to succeed. What are you going to wear? You're just going to, day of the prom, run to the closet, grab a pair of sweats and a hoodie, put your hair back here in a bun. Are you going to start early? And start early on the phase one. It's been a while, and I was never a girl at prom, but I have a feeling that this still kind of applies. Phase one of prom preparation is the pestering phase, right? Because mom and dad want you to spend this much money, and you know for this not to be a total disaster, you need to spend this much money, right? Can I get an amen? Right? And so phase one is pestering, because you know you need this dress, right here, not that other. This specific dress is the best dress for you. And no, Aunt Sarah is not doing my hair for prom. I am going to this establishment, and I am getting the special plan. And I am going to spend how much time on my makeup? More time than your guy's going to spend getting ready. Right? That's how that. Okay. Let's read how Paul puts this. When he's talking about living into your virtue. It says, put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. See, as I am looking at my virtue, my purity, my living into God's standards. The idea is that God is already expecting and he knows how good I can look, what I can do, and he's anticipating me putting my all into living the character that he wants me to be. To having the attitudes and the actions that mirror him, of being the person he created me to be. And so when I look at I'm reassessing my virtues, I'm not looking at myself trying to beat myself up because I have a problem in an area. I'm looking at that problem saying, no, God expects more from me. God believes in more for me. God knows I can be the absolute best. So therefore, I put my all into my virtue. I put my all into living God's standards. I put my all into my thought life. I put my all into my actions and attitudes. I put everything I have into it because why? Remember, this is the line for the sermon. Because God asked me to the prom. Okay? Not because I'm feeling guilty about it. Guilt can be a tool to help me, but the reality is I'm doing it because I believe and know that God wants the absolute best for me, and the absolute best means I can't have. Go back to the prom. Makeup smudge right here. I can't wear cheap eyeliner. I can't have that thing in my teeth. Man, some of us, we run around with something that's spiritual, something in our teeth all the time. We got a sin that we have in our lives, and it's right here, and everybody sees it, and we know it's there, and we're like, whatever. You're dressing like you were dressing yesterday. How'd you dress yesterday, everybody? Huh? You weren't going out of the house, were you? No. Sweats and hoodies, right? Navy pajamas. Okay? I'll be honest with you. I've changed my hairstyle. Some of you know I went from the fro to something a little less crazy. I didn't, and I hate this. I've been putting mousse in it to kind of get it to control because my hair's kind of wild. Yesterday, no mousse. Just let it ride. And some of us, we're like that with the virtues and the morality and the things that God expects in our lives, and we're just like, whatever. And God's saying, no, reassess that. I want you to take off, it says, your old nature. I want you to throw off the sweats. I want you to put on the good stuff, the good outfit. I want you to brush your teeth for goodness sake. Does that make sense? So I reassess my value, and I reassess my virtue, and I couldn't make this one rhyme or alliterate. And I reassess my mandate. I reassess why I'm here. Verse 11 had said, because we understand our fearful responsibility to the Lord, we work hard to persuade others. Verse 20 said, so we are Christ's ambassadors. God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, come back to God. We're having fun at the prom. I was going to stay at the prom for a little bit longer. Except we haven't got to the prom yet. Because it turns out the date has rented a limo. And the date has invited along his best friend. And as you know, in most schools, where does the best friend of the coolest guy, where's he on the scale? He was the next guy you were hoping would ask you, right? And who is he bringing? Oh, the girl that's right here. And they say, we'll swing by to pick you up about 7. And your mom remembers there's a prom. It says, oh, great. They can all come in and we'll take pictures. Into our house? Yeah. We'll bring them in our house. And it's over. There's nothing you can do about it. The plans are set. The order has been, they're picking up the limo. They're getting her. They're coming to get you. There's nothing you can do about it. They're coming in your house. What are you going to do to your house? Burn it down and start from scratch. No. No, man, you're gonna work on it because company's coming. Important company's coming. You're gonna actually, as a 16-year-old girl, you're gonna clean up the house without being asked. You're going to find a closet to lock your little brother in. You're going to make sure Dad doesn't wear those. Right? There's company coming, and you're going to do your best to make your house as attractive to others as you possibly can. And Jesus says, you are my ambassadors, and I want you to invite people into your lives so that you can then introduce them to Christ. So I have to take my life, and I have to make it in such a way that people can see Jesus in my life. So that they're not going to come in my house and go back and talk about me bad. We're Christ ambassadors. We have to live for God's kingdom. We have to put our all into it, knowing that everybody we encounter has the same need we do. And we need to look around. We need to be cleaning up. If we look around our culture and our community and we see areas that are just a mess, oh my gosh, how'd that stain get on the carpet? I don't know, but let's get rid of it. One of my favorite bumper stickers ever. Jesus is coming back. Everybody look busy. It's saying we can't tolerate these things because Jesus is at some point coming back, and this is his kingdom he's here to restore. And if this thing exists in our culture, I shouldn't be saying, oh, that's okay. This company's coming. Company's coming. And if there's something that is obviously there's certain things that even people who don't believe in God believe are wrong. And they kind of have this thing that God would dislike it if he exists. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes Christians will tolerate those things. I mean, everybody knows you're not supposed to hate other people. Anybody miss that memo? Anybody not get the memo that you're not supposed to treat people with disrespect and you're not supposed to, just because they're different, you're not supposed to hate them? Did anybody not get that memo? Everybody got that memo. And sometimes Christians will say, well, but it's okay because we're doing other stuff. So it's okay if that group's getting persecuted. And it's okay if those people are hungry. And it's okay. Seriously? If they're coming to my house, I'm cleaning up the house. And if the person who's coming has this annoying habit that you know about of going into every room, I'm cleaning up it's not like when regular company comes over. When regular company comes over and you've got a couple rooms that you used to decree to be off limits, where you take all the junk and you throw it there. You don't have that room, do you? Come on over, just don't go near the garage. Just please. By all that's holy, don't go near the garage. All right? Your garage is bad when you're ashamed when the guy comes over to work on your water heater and you're ashamed to let him go in your garage. That's when it's bad. You're apologizing to the repairman. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We're going to get to this summer. Really, we are. But God knows all of our culture. He knows all of our lives. There are no rooms that he's okay with. There's no place that he's okay with a child starving. There's no place where it's okay for somebody to be hating somebody else. There's no place where it's okay for us to give up on a group of people and say, we just can't have any expectations of them, just let them go. And that's one of the reasons as a church that we're getting we're more passionate about this concept of community transformation, that we're here to make this place suitable for company. Does that make sense? To make this area suitable for company, where it's not like, oh, you don't want to drive over there. And so we're looking at all these ways we can do that. And I'm encouraging everybody, look for ways that you can be active either in our church or outside of our church or with our church outside of our church to make this place better. To make it so nobody's being left behind, to make it so nobody feels like they're worthless, to where nobody feels they're unsafe. Does that make sense? And so we live to change the place so it looks like it's supposed to live. And then we're also living, it says, God has given us the task of reconciling people to him. Which means the last thing I need to reassess, one of the big ones, is I have to reassess how I view others. Verse 16 said, so we have stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. In other words, I have to look at everybody from an internal point of view. Back when we said in Isaiah, it said, every knee will bend to me and every tongue will confess allegiance to me. Now, a lot of the sermons, a lot of the things I bring on Sunday morning most of them come out of my personal time just reading the Bible and letting God speak. And this message came out of a journal entry from probably about a year ago. It says, and this is what I wrote down: view no one from a worldly point of view. That means view everyone with an eternal perspective. How can I impact or influence them spiritually? How can I move them to think with a more eternal perspective? How can I help them align their lives with God? And it should leave no one out. How can I impact the waiter, the clerk, the beggar on the corner, everyone I encounter all the time? Which it means it must start with me and my attitude. I have to think in eternal terms all the time about every situation. How can I best impact eternity with every action that I take and every decision that I make? How can I live like everything I do matters? See, I said something early on about being considered crazy. Here's the deal. The world already considers you crazy. Okay? When, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, going to church was normal. People went to church. Matter of fact, one of the things people do when they introduce us, oh, what church do you go to? How many times have you been asked that? Unless you got a big old Jesus sticker or something on you. You're secretly got a fish symbol or something, thinking, the undercover codes we give each other. I'm with you. But how many times? It's not relevant. It doesn't matter to most people. Attending church is now an anomaly instead of a given. See, we're the ones being looked at like we're crazy or out of step. So, while it used to be a rather easy thing, how do you do it now? I mean, I am reasonably sure that if I went around the room and I was able to talk to each of you individually, and I said, does it matter to you that other people come to a relationship with Christ like you have? I doubt there's anybody in this room who has that relationship with Christ say, oh, let them go to, I'm willing to bet, I have a high enough opinion of very much everybody in here, that you would say, yeah, it matters. And then if I talked to you about it and we pushed and we'd say, oh, what are you doing about it? And you go, would you like a little, when we tell you how? Because it's hard now. Honestly, it used to be pretty easy. Now it's like, hey, this person's an atheist and, probably coming to our church already, and this person's an agnostic, and this person believes in this weird thing that's out there, just this amalgam. Man, the Lego God they've built is amazing. It's like a transformer thing. But here's the process. Here's how you can live as an ambassador. Number one, you have to live it 24/7. This whole part-time Christian thing ain't gonna work. I've got my faith and I come to church on Sunday and I do my church stuff and then I go out and I live exactly like everybody who doesn't go to church. Not going to work. I talk exactly like them. I look exactly like them. I watch exactly what they watch. I do exactly the same things they do. And I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't watch, but I'm saying that your faith should impact your life 24/7. Every decision that you make. The way you treat waitresses in the restaurant should be impacted by the fact you look at them and see somebody who is either going to spend eternity with God or away from God. I'm going to go really mean with you. Every telemarketer who calls you, oh my gosh, Steve, now you're getting mean. No. The obnoxious guy at work, the nice gal at work. You have to live your faith 24/7. Love, joy, peace, gentleness, temperance, self-control, the strength that comes from God, all that stuff has to be out there. I'm not talking, obviously, about getting a big tattoo that says Christian right here and carrying around a big old Bible and beating them up and calling them names because they don't live like you think they should live. Because how do you expect somebody who's away from God to live? I expect them to live like somebody who's away from God. Okay? I'm not going to Basic rule, you ready? Basic rule. You catch the fish, then you clean the fish. You got that? You with me? What? Then you, right? A lot of times, a lot of church people, we're out trying to catch fish sticks. We're looking for people that already act like us. No. It's not the healthy that need a physician, it's the sick. It's the ones who don't know God's standards, who are living away from God's standards. Those are the ones who need it, and we need to live it in front of them all the time. And then, so we're making grace, mercy, truth, justice, forgiveness part of who you are. Steve's being mean again. If you're holding a grudge against somebody and you're refusing to forgive them, how can you then say you're an agent and an ambassador of the person who wants to forgive everybody? Sorry, just being mean. First time I've had a chance to do that this year. So you live it 24/7, and then you do something really radical and you start making friends. Making friends who make you uncomfortable, friends who say things you don't like to have said in front of you, friends who don't believe like you believe. And you live it, and you make friends, and you have conversations. Not, oh, you're a terrible person. You should quit that. You're going to hell. That really doesn't work that well. Conversations like, why do you think that? Ask politely and listen well. It's listening to what they say. And then, as the conversation progresses, you say, hey, you know what? You should check out our church online. Or better yet, you should come with me. Because what we've done is we've created a place where somebody can come in and they can ask the questions and they can figure things out in a pace that goes for their speed. And they can take as long as it takes. We've had people who have been coming to this church for years before they accepted Christ. I did the funeral for a young man who died of cancer, who when he started coming to our church was an atheist. And he and his wife started coming, and she'd gotten far from God, and they started coming to church. And over the course of 4 years, we had the conversations, and he came to a relationship with Christ. Hey? It's not a rush. It doesn't have to get done tomorrow. But it needs to get done. You live it 24/7. You make friends. You start the conversations, and then you invite them to a place where the conversations can continue. And I can bring up the things that you're quite uncomfortable bringing up. And we can show them what it looks like to be one of those crazy Christians. Still a little crazy, but not that kind of crazy. Now, there's one group I need to address real fast as we're finishing. And that is the people I was talking about we're attracting. Because you might be one of those people who came here and has been coming here who doesn't have that relationship with Christ. Can I finish reading? I was reading in 2 Corinthians 5. Let's just go on, move on to the very next verse in chapter 6. It says, as God's partners, we beg you not to accept this marvelous gift of God's kindness and then ignore it. Don't just acknowledge what's going on. For God says, at just the right time I heard you. On the day of salvation I helped you. Indeed, the right time is now. Today is the day of salvation. And as you're reassessing yourself, and if you don't have that relationship with God, it may be during that reassessment, it's time to make a step toward that relationship, a concrete step. And if you're ready to talk to somebody about it, all we ask you to do is grab one of these blue bags. We have some corners of the platform, one back on the communion table there. I think there's one on that bookshelf there. If you grab one of these, we'll hook you up with somebody who's been trained. They'll take about 10 minutes. They'll walk you through the contents of the bag, and they'll show you how to have that relationship with Christ. Now, if you have the relationship with Christ, well, welcome to the crazy club. The world's going to look at you like you're crazy. And so the first thing that Christ asks us to do is to do something crazy, be baptized. That makes no sense at all. Exactly. In front of a group of people, immersed in water, come back out just like Jesus Christ came out of the grave to announce you're living a new life for him. If you're ready to be baptized, let us know. Just send an email to baptism@spoutsprings.org or catch one of us after service. And maybe during the service you were reminded of all that Christ did for you and your value, and you want to take communion to remember that and remind you of a communion station here in the front, one in the back. Maybe you want to pray about something's come up, and as you're reassessing, there's a thing you'd like to pray about. We have a cross right there, and the purpose of that is a place where you can pray. That's what it's about. If you want to go over there and pray by yourself, that's great. If you want to pray with somebody, we've got some people sort of around the outskirts of the room, and during this next song, you can just walk up to one of them and say, would you pray with me? And they'll non-judgmentally pray with you about anything, and you can reveal whatever you want to reveal, and whatever you don't want to reveal, you don't have to. I know we starting out the year, and this possibly wasn't the most comfortable sermon you've ever heard. I've poked you in the area of who God really is. We've been poking you in the area of what God really wants in your life, what God wants to accomplish through you. But the important thing is, I don't know if you noticed, if you looked at it, there's actually a title of the sermon, An Uncomfortable Reality. And I know we've talked about stuff that's uncomfortable, but the most important part is not that it's uncomfortable, it's that it's a reality. That there really is a God. That every knee will bow. That every tongue will confess. That all of us will, and I don't mean to scare you, but I just want you to be aware of it, you will stand for God, in front of God, to give an account for what you've done. That's a reality. See, I want you to go away being reminded as we start this year that God is real. And that reality needs to impact my every action, my every decision, and every encounter I have with any other person who Christ died for. And oh, by the way, that's all of them.
Would you stand with us?